Hello, everyone. Welcome to Module 4, Team Dynamics and Organizational Dysfunction. Now, that is what I would call a provocative title. I am Mary Henderson, another instructor in this course. We think that you will find this module to be very interesting and engaging, and maybe even a little uncomfortable at times, as you apply your own experiences or recollection of experiences to the material here. From a personal perspective, with over 35 years in healthcare analytics and the last 20 of those as a leader, I am no stranger to negative team interactions and dysfunctional teams or organizations. The readings and assignment exercises in this module should really get you thinking about these issues and tying them to your professional and personal experiences. I am so pleased to be working with you this semester. This is my first time co-leading a course in this great program at UIC. In the past, I've had the pleasure of working with interns and graduates of your program at one of my former employers, Blue Health Intelligence. My background is working as a leader in the health analytics area, primarily leading teams who design, develop, deliver, and support health analytics platforms for use by payers, providers, and employers. Recently, I have launched a consultancy with some former colleagues, and I soon will be serving on some boards. Throughout my career, I have worked with many kinds of teams: executive teams, board teams, product teams, teams that span multiple departments and functions, and project focused teams. I've had the pleasure of working with high functioning teams, but I've also experienced my share of working with and even leading dysfunctional teams. With the latter, I have had some success in turning them around using many of the techniques we will be working with in this module. This is the last 2-week module of this course. As you did before in modules 2 and 3, there is a group and individual exercises. The format of these exercises should be familiar to you from your work in the earlier modules. You can find the detailed instructions for the assignments in Blackboard under the Module 4 link. In this short introduction, I will present briefly what the learning goals are of this module, then I'll introduce the key readings and material and discuss the assignments. As always, the faculty are here for you to provide guidance, answer questions, and share our experiences. We don't expect you to memorize or retain minutiae from the readings and materials, but instead concentrate on understanding and applying the key concepts and learnings. In this module, Team Dynamics and Organizational Dysfunction, we want you to gain knowledge, demonstrate skills, and build confidence in your understanding of team building and how to manage and resolve conflicts. As before in this course, our focus will be on how HIT teams can best plan and implement major products that are critical to the success of their organizations. Specifically, we will address the following: how to identify organizational sources of conflict. What is the appropriate use of the various conflict management styles that we'll discuss? Identification of the qualities of good team leaders, but then also comparing the characteristics of high and low performing teams. Strategies for forming a successful team for HIT projects, application of the conflict resolution model to HIT, and then turning around a dysfunctional team. I think we all understand, either from our direct experience or just intuitively, that good teamwork is the critical component to success in whatever realm we consider: work, family, community, etc. Patrick Lencioni makes a bold claim here in this slide, but I do think it's very credible. Lencioni is considered a business guru and is a very well-regarded management consultant and keynote speaker. He's worked at Bain and Company, Oracle, and Sybase. His most popular book and biggest claim to fame is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, a Business Fable, that we are reading for this module. He has written many other books on management techniques applicable in many settings, including families. In fact, a new book, 6 Types of Working Genius, was just published a few weeks ago. If you like his style and insights, then you may want to check these out in addition to the many YouTube videos, including TED Talks. I really enjoyed the book. It was very readable and engaging. The popularity of the book is due to the simple and accessible model of teamwork it introduces. The model is represented as a pyramid, and it has been applied in many situations and teams throughout the world. The main character of the book, Catherine, is the new CEO of a Silicon Valley tech company, and she uses this model to help her own team. There are 8 other characters on our team that we get introduced to as well. The former CEO, co-founders, heads of marketing, sales, and customer support, the CFO and the COO. But it's really the interactions and dynamics among Catherine and her team that are vividly and realistically portrayed as the fable unfolds. These are typical kinds of relationships that you'll find in healthcare and any organization, really. As you will see, Catherine's behavior as she steps into her new role as CEO may surprise you, both for what she does and does not do. The major premise is that teams must learn to trust each other before they can effectively move up the pyramid, move up to the next phase, which is learning to engage in constructive conflict. And then that um, does form the basis of moving through the rest of the steps and culminating in the pinnacle here of the pyramid, which is actually achieving the results. This is an interesting question for us all to think about. What does trust mean in the workplace? How do we build trust with our coworkers, our leaders, our team members? Who can or should we trust? Are there some people that we cannot or should not trust? Is this true in all situations or only some of the time? All of these are questions that are considered in our Lencioni texts. According to Lencioni, when there is no trust, that's when the problems really begin. Lencioni brings to life some of the key symptoms of a team where there is little trust and thus a fear of conflict. When the team has meetings where nobody really says anything, and these meetings are non-productive and they're usually pretty boring. We've all been there, I think. Also, another symptom is a failure to tap into opinions and perspectives of all the team members during the meetings. Need to hear everyone's point of view. The last is a symptom that can be pretty evident is the creation of an environment where there's a lot of back channel politics and personal attacks can thrive. As I say, I think many of us have seen these symptoms play out in real life, and Lencioni offers ideas and techniques about how to manage effectively out of them and create a high-functioning team. The individual assignment for this module asks you to work with and drill into the concepts from this book. Until fairly recently, I was leading a team of developers and product managers, all working on supporting and enhancing a health analytics platform. Unfortunately, there was a deep mistrust between the leader of the product team and the leader of the development team. This created quite a bit of dysfunction amongst the entire team, with unproductive meetings and behind the scenes backstabbing that ultimately led to missed deadlines and some client dissatisfaction. The situation only improved once both leaders were reorganized into new positions and others took their places. Central to his concept of addressing and managing team dysfunction is Lencioni's conflict resolution model. The model illustrates why it is challenging to get to the heart of the issue in the middle of the circle and make the real problem or issue the focus of the interaction of the team. Several layers must be penetrated before getting to that core problem. Avoiding conflict does not work and help you get there. In fact, that can exacerbate the problem. Some of these obstacles may seem unrelated, but they still can create distractions and barriers. Teams have to learn to handle this conflict constructively. An important step is to identify and diagnose the barriers. From the outer layer to the inner layer, here are a few that we can discuss here. The individual obstacle. This is considered to be the most challenging type of behavior. A team member or members may have character or personality traits that inhibit honest conversation. Underlying reasons that this may occur may be because they have low self-esteem, they don't have the right experience or education, or they may have low emotional intelligence or EQ. They might have values that conflict with the team or with leaderships. The O'Hara article that we're also reading for this module provides some good tips as to how to tease this out in real life situations. Gives you some tips. The next obstacle are relationship obstacles. And this may manifest itself as some unresolved past conflict. There may be some stress in the past that it was never resolved among team members. There could be a big difference in management or leadership styles. Or, and this happens quite a bit, the person with the most formal authority may dominate. The leader, CEO, or just the person that's the most senior may dominate and prevent other people from voicing their concerns. And you could have departments that are in conflict with how to achieve certain goals. Environmental obstacles really have nothing to do with the issue at hand, but they can be distracting. The team may not be able to get to the real issue because the physical environment is too noisy. It's not private. They might not have enough time. They might be crunched for time. Or there could be atmospheric environmental obstacles, like people are worried about office politics or impending layoffs. The last barrier that is somewhat easier to deal with is informational. And these are usually more easy to discuss, but the teams do need to feel free to exchange information, facts, opinions, and perspectives freely and in a safe environment. As a leader, once you clearly identify these obstacles, you can address each appropriately and navigate your team to the actual core issue or the problem at hand, which might be that they're missing performance targets, or there could be product failures. The group exercise that you will be working through, you'll use this framework and other components of your readings when you do that exercise. Other readings in this module will bring us back to Heifetz's Leading Adaptive Change book, specifically his section on you as a system. As previously mentioned, Heifetz is one of the world's foremost authorities on the practice and teaching of leadership. The important takeaways from this section of the book are three. The first is to how to get a deeper understanding of the complicated, conflicting loyalties within yourself and how they are affecting you in any particular context. The second one is your personal tuning, how you are wired or tuned to react to particular situations or interactions. The third is your capacity or bandwidth. What do you possess that will help you lead the team through adaptive change, and how can you expand your bandwidth? Within the loyalties, he talks about three types. There are your colleagues, and they're people that you work with, your peers at work, your boss, subordinates, etc. Your community, there are other people that are not professional or part of your job, but your family members, your friends, your social or political um, uh, members of groups that you also work with. And then there are your ancestors, and there he talks about ancestors as people or groups that you identify with um, strongly, like it could be gender specific or gender related or ethnic or religious. Understanding how you prioritize and value these loyalties is key to successful leadership. An important exercise is to observe the differences with where you think your loyalties are and where you are actually spending your time. In chapter 15, there is also a really good discussion of triggers. I like this section since it's something I have really had to watch in my own career. It's a common experience. It's what's pushing your buttons or hitting a nerve. For example, I have been triggered in the past when I believed I had been shut out of an important meeting, even though there could have been, and there probably was, a valid reason not to include me. I was triggered by my own insecurity in this case. If something like this triggers you, it can temporarily set you spinning out of control. As Heifetz says, your bright, strategic, graceful self gets edged out by your more primal, defensive self. Can you think of a time when this has happened to you? If not in the workplace, then in other non-work relationships? As a leader in the workplace, it is useful to be aware of what triggers set you off so that you can recognize them when they happen and be prepared with a strategy for what you will do when it does happen, because it most probably will. The final default setting that is discussed is your bandwidth. or as we mentioned, your repertoire of techniques for moving forward adaptive change in the organization. Your bandwidth is simply your ability to deal with a situation or an issue, especially one that can involve a lot of both technical and adaptive challenges. It is your emotional and mental energy, coupled with your range of skills, your expertise, and experience, and fueled by your will to push your boundaries when necessary. A key learning here in Chapter 16 is knowing when you can add value. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses will help you determine if the situation at hand is one that can actually benefit from your involvement. Is the situation calling for a project manager versus a strategic planner? Truly understanding and being realistic about where you fit in there, about your personal pros and cons, can help you conserve your bandwidth for application at times when you can be the most valuable. Another gem to consider is that you need to develop a tolerance for disorder, ambiguity, and tension. And this is really hard for people. But if they're going to successfully lead adaptive change, you have to be able to tolerate ambiguity and tension. Many people have to learn to expand their bandwidth to thrive in a more chaotic, uncertain environment. I have found that particularly challenging sometimes with analytic or technical staff I have managed who want to have perfect knowledge of all the facts and possible future scenarios before they can make a decision. For example, about resource allocation for a new project. Sometimes you don't have all the facts. You have to operate in a zone of ambiguity. Expanding bandwidth is not easy. It is just as much will as skill. In my own career, I have had to painfully and quickly stretch my bandwidth from my comfort level as an individual contributor, an SME or SME, to a position of multifunctional team leadership. My biggest challenges were learning to manage through conflict triggers like unclear lines of authority. I thought that I had laid down the lines of authority very clearly and they were perfectly obvious to me, but this was not well understood or accepted by my team. And I had to learn to both listen and communicate much better. Is this part of your bandwidth, do you think? Do you need to allow for ambiguity and tension so you don't unnecessarily add to your bandwidth to the point where you can't handle things? Sometimes situations are self-resolving, or it pays to allow time for team members to step up to resolve issues. If you solve the problem all the time, that is rescuing others from their responsibilities. But at other times, the leader must be the one to manage it, and they should discern which thing they can do, what is the best thing the leader can do in a given situation. Finally, um, the reading talks about roles and really how roles operate in very interesting ways. All groups do assign people roles, whether it's your family, a team you're in, a department you belong to, a faction, or a company. This is how people create clarity and order. They create roles. But you are not the same as your role. You act differently in each role, but it's still you, and that's okay. You'll behave differently. It's just not the role is just not the whole picture of you. The more that you can make the distinction between yourself and the role, the more effective that you can be. In your role, you might get personally attacked, and you have to understand how not to react to that. And you might be, people might falsely flatter you, but you don't want to be taken in by that. You don't want to become idealized as a leader because that creates dependency and not capacity. You want to learn to play more roles than you're actually formally assigned. The more roles you can play, the more factions that you'll be part of. So you'll have those connections when it's time to tackle tough issues and adaptive change. This slide shows just some examples of all the roles one can play. It suggested that you might want to do this for yourself, kind of see what distribute your time in the roles that you think you play, and then layer on how much satisfaction you receive from each role. Looking at the discrepancy, like I might spend 50% of my time in my management role, but I only get 5% of my overall satisfaction in that. That may mean that I may have to make some adaptive changes in my life. Um, to talk very briefly now about the assignments for this module are detailed under module link for the module 4 link, as I mentioned. For the group scenario exercise, 3 discussion forums have been started for your group. In each, a scenario about problem solving has been presented for the group to discuss. The scenarios describe a team who is grappling with dissatisfied users of a virtual platform. For each of the scenarios, everyone will post 6 times. The instructions for the group exercise contain a link to 3 analysis tools and models. Use these 3 tools to analyze your scenario and develop your discussion posts. The conflict resolution model is one of those that we talked about earlier here today. The individual exercise is about team dynamics and team leadership. Here, you will draw both from the Lencioni material and your learnings from the group exercise to answer a series of questions. Finally, you will submit a journal reflection based on your thoughts about your default settings, as we just talked a little bit about and was discussed in the Heifetz book, and how do your default settings influence your thoughts and reactions. And so finally, it's time to get started, and this is great. We will quit talking and we will begin doing. Well, I hope you really enjoy this module. I'm excited to be here with you and hope I get a chance to speak frequently to all of you. Thank you.